Hello everyone. On the occasion of the Gita week, we are bringing two talks over this weekend. Today, I will be giving an introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Tomorrow, we will be examining the practical application of the Bhagavad Gita in everyday life. For those who may not be familiar, the Bhagavad Gita is an ancient scriptural text. Historians say that the Bhagavad Gita was written around 2,500 to 5,000 years ago. And when people hear that, they say, oh my God, this is an old book. This is an ancient book. Why bother about it now? Times have changed. There's so many technological advancements which has happened today. Is the age of the internet. And what is the necessity to read a book that was written 5,000 years ago? What is the relevance of the Bhagavad Gita in modern times? Friends, do you all know when the wheel was invented? It was invented 5,000 years ago by the Mesopotamians. Do you know when the fire was discovered? It was discovered even before that. Can we think of life today without the wheel, without fire? Impossible. And the wheel and fire were discovered before the Bhagavad Gita. So just because something is old, it would be absurd to throw it out. So just as the wheel and fire are what we can call as timeless inventions, similarly, the Bhagavad Gita contains timeless truths, eternal principles. And there's a beautiful Sanskrit word for that. It's called Sanatana Dharma. You can see that on the screen. Sanatana Dharma means eternal principles, timeless truths. It doesn't change with time. So the Bhagavad Gita was relevant 5,000 years ago, it's relevant today, and it will be relevant 5,000 years later. Just as the law of gravity discovered by Newton is relevant today, though it was discovered hundreds of years back, the law of flotation discovered by Archimedes is relevant today. So these are eternal principles, these are eternal laws. So not only the Bhagavad Gita is relevant to the modern times, but the Bhagavad Gita is imperative to the modern times. And that's what we're going to examine. How? Why? If you analyze the world carefully, what you will find is that there is an imbalance in the world today. Right through the world, from South Africa to Australia to England to India, any part of the world, there's an imbalance. And what is the imbalance? The imbalance between the standard of living and the standard of life. Compared to 50 years back, 100 years back, we have better homes, we have better cars, we have better furniture, we have more amenities and facilities, better comforts. And yet, people are affected by debt. They're affected by divorce, depression, vandalism, terrorism is plaguing the world. So today, people have gained the world, but they have lost their souls. I'm sure many of you all in the audience would have already taken your vaccine, and many others would be in the line to get your vaccines. Yes, we are getting the vaccine for COVID, for all these viruses, for all external factors. But has anyone got the vaccine for mental immunity? There is a pandemic of mental health in the world today. Who is addressing that? Where is a vaccine for worries and anxieties? Do you realize in the UK, which is a developed country, a few years back, they appointed a minister for loneliness. The government has appointed a minister for loneliness, a minister for suicide prevention. The problem is so huge. The standard of living has been improved, but the standard of life has plummeted. So people are needlessly suffering in the world. Merely improving the world is not enough. Mega companies like Google, Apple, Samsung are pouring billions of dollars to doing what? To developing smartphones, smart gadgets. But what we need is smart humans. Now, how to develop smart humans? We have artificial intelligence, but where is the real intelligence? So the need of the hour today is a mental vaccine. And I can announce that the mental vaccine has been discovered. When? Not now, 10,000 years back. So this mental vaccine is what is known as Vedanta. So Vedanta is nothing but a mental vaccine, a technology for living, a science of self-development. It is a universal knowledge. And when the great sages discovered this knowledge, they did not patent it. There's no copyright. There is no intellectual property rights. They left it open. Therefore, we are benefited by the great service of those great masters. We have access to this knowledge today. So Vedanta is the science and technology of self-development, self-management. Just as science improves the standard of living, Vedanta improves the standard of life. See that on the screen. What is the relationship between science and Vedanta? Science is focusing on the external world. It improves the standard of living, whereas Vedanta focuses on the individual, how to improve the individual and improves the standard of life. So the message of Vedanta is set yourself right. Okay, you're developing the world, improving the world, making the world a better place, but what about yourself? So you need to set yourself right. It's been a few years since any one of us have boarded a flight. But if you all remember those good old days when we used to fly, there used to be an announcement, oh, before you put the mask on the child, you put the mask to yourself. Wear your mask before you give it to your child. It's exactly the same principle. The same principle in life is unless you develop yourself, unless you improve yourself, how are you going to help everyone else? How can you help your own children, your own family, your own colleagues if you have not improved yourself? So self-development, self-management is essential for everyday living. And Bhagavad Gita focuses on self-development, on self-management. Prophet Muhammad used to tell to his followers that the greatest jihad is the conquest of yourself. Obviously, they have not picked up the message. The message of the great prophet was the greatest jihad. Jihad means a holy war, is the conquest of yourself, not of others. See that on the screen. The great words in the Holy Quran. So just as the Quran is a holy text, similarly the Bhagavad Gita is one of the most popular texts which contains the philosophy of Vedanta. So how should you approach the Bhagavad Gita? How should you approach the knowledge of Vedanta? It's a manual for living. Before you get into your car, you take a driving test. Make sure you know how to drive before you take the car. Before a surgeon can operate a patient, he has to be trained and qualified. Only then he can do that. Now every one of us are operating our personalities. Has anyone learned how to operate yourselves? Nobody has learned it. And that's where you need this knowledge. It's a manual for living. And you need to start this when you're young. So as Vedanta teachers, when we go around telling people, hey, come for the classes, this Bhagavad Gita classes, this Vedanta classes, you go and tell them, they say, oh, you know what, we're very busy. Oh, you're too busy. As if we have no work, They're saying, we're very busy. Oh, we're very busy. Oh, But you know what? What you're saying sounds very interesting. Why don't you come to me after 60? He wants me to note down and come to him after he is 60. Because he's saying he has no time now. What is the point of learning how to live after you've lived your life? What is the point of learning how to live after you lived your life? So Bhagavad Gita has become a post-retirement plan. It's become a post-retirement pastime today. But that's not how it is intended to be. The Bhagavad Gita or Vedanta is meant for youngsters to start their life. It should be the first thing that should be taught in schools and universities. So please understand that living is an art. It's a skill. It's a technique. Just as you need to learn how to play the piano, just as you need to learn before you can fly an aircraft, similarly, living is an art, is a skill, is a technique. See it on the screen. Famous words of Swamiji. Living is an art, a skill, a technique. You need to learn and practice it. How many have learned it? How many are practicing it? So what we are going to learn in this class today and tomorrow is nothing but life. So decoding the Bhagavad Gita. What is decoding the Bhagavad Gita? Is decoding life itself. These are essential principles of living. Now, what are the life lessons that we can learn from the Bhagavad Gita? What is it that we can take from the Bhagavad Gita and apply to our lives? How should we look at the Bhagavad Gita? How should we study the Bhagavad Gita? So there are a few life lessons which I'll be sharing with you all. So the first aspect of the Bhagavad Gita is, many of you all may not know, this is the only scripture which was given in a battlefield. The backdrop of the Bhagavad Gita is that it is given in the battlefield, and Krishna is talking to his dear friend Arjuna. The context of the Bhagavad Gita is there is a war going on between two families. It's a civil war between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And the Kauravas are unrighteous. They have introduced corruption in the society. So the Pandavas want to fight the Kauravas to resurrect the country, to make sure that there is righteousness in the society. So that's the reason this war was initiated. And for 13 long years, the Pandavas have been waiting to fight the Kauravas and regain the country. And Arjuna is the chief warrior among the Pandavas. And he's fully charged for 13 years. He's been waiting. In fact, everybody had to hold him back. Hey, Arjuna, wait. He was so fully charged. But when the time came to fight them, he collapsed. He completely collapsed. He couldn't hold the bow and arrow. He was telling Krishna, Krishna, my hands are shaking. My knees are knocking. My mind is paralyzed. My intellectual faculties are gone. I can't function. That is the backdrop of how the Bhagavad Gita starts. So the Bhagavad Gita was given in a battlefield, and today, if the Bhagavad Gita was written, it would have been given in a boardroom or a courtroom or in a sports stadium, where there is maximum tension, where there is maximum pressure. So the first thing you learn from the Bhagavad Gita is that you need to be able to face the challenges in life, not escape from it. At the drop of the hat, people want to escape from the challenges. So you've got to confront the challenges in life. Arjuna wants to escape the battlefield, and Krishna is giving the Bhagavad Gita and telling him to get back to action. Action is the insignia of life. Without action, nobody can exist. Action is important for your physical well-being and also for your mental well-being. See the difference between a stagnant pond and running rivers. When a pond is stagnant, what happens? It breeds germs, it breeds diseases. Whereas the same water, when it starts running, it's fresh. It's so nice, it's so cool. Similarly, when you're active, your mind is fresh. But if you're inactive, there is decay. And that's why there's a proverb that an idle man's brain is a devil's workshop. The first principle of life is action. And once you start acting, you need to adopt action to your obligation. Arjuna's obligation was, he was a warrior. He had to go and fight. Similarly, your obligation could be a doctor, could be an engineer, you could be a student. Whatever your obligation is, you ought to perform your obligation. In fact, in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the very first verse of the 6th chapter, he defines who is a yogi, who is a sannyasi. People have strange notions of a yogi, of a sannyasi. The longer the beard, the greater the yogis. That's what people think. So when they look at us, clean shaven, this fellow is not spiritual. What does he know about the Bhagavad Gita? So next time I'll grow a longer beard. Then you'll take me more seriously. So that is the concept of spirituality today, is beards and all sorts of paraphernalia around you. Whereas in the first verse of the 6th chapter, he says, Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiyah sa sannyasi sa yogi cha na niragnir na chakriya. Who is a sannyasi? Who is a yogi? See that on the screen. So he defines who is a sannyasi, who is a yogi. He who does his bounden duty without depending on the fruit of action. Whatever your duty is, you've got to do that. You're managing your house, that is your duty, do that. You're a sports person, do that. You're a business person, do that. Then you're a sannyasi, you're a yogi. This is the only requirement. This is the only qualification. So you got to get back to action, get back to performing your obligations. Secondly, Bhagavad Gita is a scripture. The difference between a scripture and a novel is that a scripture is written to make you think, not merely give information. So when you pick up the Bhagavad Gita, you're not meant to blindly follow it, but you're supposed to think about it. When we go to many Indian homes, they have a lot of respect and regard for the Bhagavad Gita. And usually they cover it with an orange cloth. So when you go to their house and you ask them, hello, what is that? Oh, that is the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, have you opened it? No. So they have not opened the Bhagavad Gita. It's covered by the orange cloth. It'll stay like that. It'll end like that. They don't open it. So there's a lot of devotion. There's a lot of reverence to the text, no doubt. But what is the use of the Bhagavad Gita if it is always covered? So, friends, the Bhagavad Gita is meant to be studied, to be investigated. You've got to think through it. The Bhagavad Gita is in a question and answer format. Arjuna is asking question and Krishna is answering it. Similarly, the Upanishads, which came even before the Bhagavad Gita, is in the form of question and answers. So all the Vedanta texts are in the form of question and answers, meaning that you've got to think. Not only that, what is interesting is when the Bhagavad Gita starts and Arjuna starts complaining to Krishna and he says, Krishna, I can't fight, leave me alone. Krishna does not speak. The whole of the first chapter, 47 verses, Krishna doesn't speak. He's quiet. That's why we have muted you all. Otherwise, you all start speaking, So Krishna was quiet. 47 verses. He's not talking. You could feel that silence. The silence of maturity, the silence of confidence, the silence of knowledge. And what was Krishna waiting for? For Arjuna to surrender. Until Arjuna surrenders in the second chapter, Krishna doesn't start speaking. So the principle you need to learn in life is that knowledge should never be given. It should always be taken. At the drop of the hat, parents give lectures to the children. CEOs give lecture to their employees. The government gives lecture to the citizens. That's why it doesn't work. Knowledge should never be given. It should be taken. When someone comes and asks you, then give the knowledge. Until then, what should you do? Follows Krishna's example. Keep quiet. If anybody starts talking, what is the first thing we say? If you ask me, I think you should do that. Who asked you in the first place? Nobody asks you. That's why the fellow says, if you ask me, because nobody is asking him. So, the word education. Where does the word education come from? Educate is derived from the Latin term edu and cate, which means to draw out. So education is not to push in ideas, but it is to draw it out. See that on the screen. And that's exactly the principle that Krishna follows. That's exactly the principle the Vedanta teachers follow. Is to draw out the knowledge, not to keep pushing it. And thirdly, friends, the Bhagavad Gita is a universal text. It has universal applicability. Bhagavad Gita is not a Hindu text. Bhagavad Gita is a philosophical text. Hinduism is a religion. Christianity is a religion. Islam is a religion. But Vedanta is not a religion. Bhagavad Gita is not a religion. It's a philosophy. There's a difference between philosophy and religion. Philosophy is eternal truths, Sanatana Dharma. And out of this philosophy, great thinkers, great masters, they took out one aspect of the philosophy and they gave it to a particular audience. Christ spoke and gave the Sermon in the Mount. Prophet Muhammad spoke to the Bedouins in the desert. Krishna spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield. They gave it to a particular audience, and that has become a religion today. So religion is certain principle given to a particular audience at a particular time. It's not eternal truths. So see that on the screen, the difference between philosophy and religion. So philosophy is the same in all periods of time. That is Vedanta, that is Bhagavad Gita. Whereas religion is meant for a particular audience at a particular time. It's not eternal. Philosophy is based on knowledge. Religion is based on personality. You take away Christ, there's no Christianity. You take away Buddha, there is no Buddhism. Whereas in Vedanta, you can take away all sages and yet the knowledge remains. Philosophy is based on facts. Religion is based on opinions. So what we are trying to learn today and what you should be interested in is the philosophy. And this philosophy of Vedanta is the base for all religions. The central theme of the Bhagavad Gita, the entire Bhagavad Gita is symbolic. The central theme of the Bhagavad Gita is the battle that is going on within you. And what is the battle going on within every one of us? It is a battle between your positive desires and your negative desires. Positive desires is indicated by the Pandavas, negative desires by the Kauravas. It's not external, it's internal. You're facing the battle, I'm facing the battle. And the same thing is indicated by John Milton in his famous book, Paradise Lost. He talks about the war between the gods and the demons. So how to manage your desires? And you manage your desires by using your intellect. So your desires come from your mind. But your desires should not direct your life, should not direct your actions. Then you will be in trouble. It is your intellect which has to manage your desires. I hope you all know of F1, Formula One driving. You see Formula One, when they drive the cars at such a high speed. Lewis Hamilton, the way he drives, superb speed he drives, but he has a perfect control over the wheel. It's so exciting to watch them. because they have a perfect control. So it is not how fast you drive, it is what control do you have. Similarly, friends, it's not how many desires that you have that matters, but do you have a control over them? So Bhagavad Gita is not against desires. It's not saying that you should drop the desires, but control the desires, give it a direction. And how to give a direction to your desires? That's the metaphor of the chariot. Again, many Indian homes you go, you find that displayed on the wall. Nobody knows what that is. So the symbolism of the chariot. What is the symbolism of the chariot? The chariot represents the individual. The chariot is led by the horses. There are 5 horses, and the 5 horses represents the senses, the 5 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. And these senses are driving you. But you need a charioteer to hold the horses back, to control the horses. And the charioteer is Krishna, and Krishna represents the intellect. See that on the screen. Krishna controlling those 5 horses. The horses are the senses. The reins are the mind. Charioteer is the intellect. So if the intellect is strong, it can control the individual. And that is Arjuna. Arjuna is the individual. The individual is protected. The individual is well taken care of. So the Bhagavad Gita is explaining something which is happening within you, how to manage yourself. Don't take it literally. It's all symbolic. See, in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, perform a yajna. Yajna means a fire ritual. It's prima facie absurd. In the middle of the battlefield, he's telling Arjuna, perform a yajna. You call the priest and start a fire. Where? Everybody's ready to fight. It's prima facie absurd. So it doesn't mean it literally that you got to start a yajna. What he means is have that spirit of cooperative endeavor in your actions. Similarly, when Christ said, when somebody strikes you on one cheek, show the other cheek, he didn't mean it literally. Otherwise, you'll just be getting hit in cheek after cheek. That's not what he means. What he means is it's an internal phenomenon. Internally, you should not have any ill will towards them. Similarly, when Prophet Muhammad said, fight the infidels, he meant fight your desires. Desire is infidel. All these great prophets spoke the same language, but the language has to be deciphered. It has to be interpreted and applied to our lives. But this knowledge is lost, and therefore you find none of the religions practice what their own prophets have given them. So the 5th life lesson that we can learn from the Bhagavad Gita is the importance of self-effort. You want help with your finances, you go to a financial consultant. But if you take help from the financial consultant, he can't earn for you. You have to earn. You can't tell the financial consultant, I'll pay you double you earn. You lose more money. You've got to earn. Similarly, you want to make your physical body fit, you have to exercise. You can't tell the personal trainer, I'll pay you double, you exercise. He'll exercise. His body will develop, your body won't. So if you want to develop the physical body, if you want to develop your finances, you've got to put in the effort. Similarly, friends, as far as spiritual development is concerned, each one of us have to do the effort. You can't pass the buck to somebody else. And yet in the spiritual field, there is a notion that, oh, if the guru blesses me, I'll be all right. I'll do all wrong things. I go to the guru, bless me. It's absurd. Nobody thinks. So no guru, nobody can bless. Who is saying this? Krishna is saying this. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna surrenders to Krishna and says, Krishna, whatever you tell me, I will do it. I will do your bidding. You tell me what to do. To which Krishna says, I can't help you. You've got to help yourself. The famous words of Krishna, lift yourself by yourself. Raise yourself by yourself. See that on the screen. Otherwise, you won't believe me. From the 6th chapter, the 5th verse, Krishna says, let man lift himself by himself. Let him not lower himself. To his own dear friend who is surrendered, who is ready to take whatever advice he gives, he says, no, you've got to lift yourself. Because the role of Krishna, the role of a guru is merely a signpost. The word guru literally means dispeller of darkness. Guru is a signpost pointing us in the right direction. And it would be absurd to go and hold on to the signpost and not follow the direction. And that's exactly what people are doing. They're getting attached to the guru and not putting in any effort. So you've got to lift yourself by yourself. You've got to put in that effort, self-development, self-management. That's why in the olden days when they designed the temples, there's a single path that took you to the temples. What it means is each one has to put in their efforts individually. And finally, the last lesson we can learn from the Bhagavad Gita is Bhagavad Gita promotes liberal thinking. There are no do's and don'ts in the Bhagavad Gita. The other day, somebody called me. One of the class members recommended this person to speak to me. I don't know that person. First time he's calling me. So he called me and he was asking, you know what? I have a dilemma whether I should eat meat or should I turn vegetarian? And I wanted to find out from you, since you're teaching the Bhagavad Gita, where does it tell you in the Bhagavad Gita that you've got to be vegetarian? To which straight away I told him, nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita it tells you that. So nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita it tells you you have to be a vegetarian. You should not eat meat. Nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita it tells you do's and don'ts. Otherwise it will be very simple. Instead of giving all this lecture, one day we will send you a list, do's. Second day we'll send you don'ts. It's as simple as that. But that's not how life works. So you've got to think for yourself. You've got to decide for yourself. And Bhagavad Gita is the most liberal textbook you can come across. It doesn't tell you anything. In fact, at the end of the 18 chapters, when Krishna concludes his sermon, he tells Arjuna, Arjuna, yatha ichchasi tata kuru, which means do as you wish. He doesn't tell him, I've spoken to you for so long, I've blown my lungs, please do what I'm asking you to do. No, that's not how a guru thinks. The guru gives the knowledge and leaves the student to decide what they ought to do. So, yatha ichchasi tata kuru, do as you wish. Same advice we should follow as parents, we should follow as CEOs. So you give the knowledge, but leave them to decide what they should do. The more liberal you leave it, the more it grows. Why has Hinduism thrived for centuries? Because it's liberal. Why has the Bhagavad Gita thrived for centuries? Because it's liberal. Anything liberal will thrive. The moment you put do's and don'ts, it will work for a short while, but it will all collapse. So the Bhagavad Gita is a part of the larger epic. In India, there are two great epics called the Ramayana and Mahabharata, just as the Greek epics like Iliad and Odyssey. Similarly, in India, it's called Ramayana and Mahabharata. Bhagavad Gita is a part of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata, for those who may not know, is one of the oldest epics, is one of the longest epics. Mahabharata consists of 100,000 verses. The Bhagavad Gita is the central part of the Mahabharata, is the philosophical text of the Mahabharata. It consists of 701 verses. And the Bhagavad Gita is like a pendant to the necklace. If Mahabharata can be compared to the necklace, Bhagavad Gita is the pendant that adorns it. There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. These 18 chapters are like Lego blocks. And if you put the Lego blocks together, you get a panoramic view of life. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita is giving us. As I mentioned to you all, the Upanishads is the older text to the Bhagavad Gita. The oldest philosophical text is the Upanishads. And the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are explaining one aphorism of the Upanishads. And the aphorism of the Upanishads is Tat Tvam Asi. The famous aphorism of the Upanishads, Tat Tvamasi. When the student goes to the master and asks the master for advice, "Sir, what should I do?" To which the master replies, Tat Tvamasi, which means that thou art. See it on the screen. That thou art. You are that. You are the truth. You are the reality. That's the proclamation of the Upanishads. And the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are explaining this aphorism. The first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita explain the first part, the second part, the third set of 6 chapters explain the third part. And together, Bhagavad Gita is giving an insight on who you are. What is your nature? The first word of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is Kurukshetra. So the last word is Dharma. So the entire Bhagavad Gita is sandwiched between the 2 words Dharma Mama. Mama Dharma. Mama Dharma means my nature. So the Bhagavad Gita is investigating what is your nature? What is my nature? The Sanskrit word Dharma means your nature. So the entire Bhagavad Gita is sandwiched between these 2 words Dharma Mama. So the entire Bhagavad Gita is symbolic. In fact, Lord Krishna, the way Lord Krishna is designed, some of the pictures you see of Lord Krishna, you'll find he's blue in color. And some of the people are confused who are not familiar with it. They ask, is he got some sort of a disease? Why is he blue in color? No, it's not that. Krishna is blue in color. It's a beautiful symbolism. The sky is blue. The oceans are blue. Blue is the color of infinity. And Krishna wears yellow garments, yellow clothes. Blue, wearing yellow clothes. Yellow is the color of earth. You take any substance and put it into earth, it turns yellow. So what it indicates is the infinite has come into a finite form. Krishna is that infinite being, has come into a finite form. See that on the screen. So blue clothed in yellow. Blue represents infinity and yellow represents finite. So the infinite in a finite form. That is the symbolism. And Krishna is dark. Why is Krishna dark? The reason Krishna is dark is because your essential nature, your real nature is the Atman, the self. It is dark. Dark means it's not known to you. That's why when you go to temples, you will find the sanctum sanctorum of the temples is dark. Some people wonder, this is because the temple is poor. Maybe they don't have lighting. It's not that. It's purposely kept dark. Because the significance is your real nature is dark, meaning unknown. So you've got to discover this real nature. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita ultimately takes you to. So the Bhagavad Gita has got several principles. But traditionally, there are 3 pillars of the Bhagavad Gita. There are 3 pillars which are traditionally known as the structure of the Bhagavad Gita. And what are these 3 pillars of the Bhagavad Gita? I'll first tell you the Sanskrit words and then I'll tell you the English equivalents. The 3 pillars of the Bhagavad Gita are Brahmacharya, Ahimsa, and Satyam. Brahmacharya means self-control. Ahimsa means non-injury. Satyam means truth. There are hundreds and hundreds of principles in the Bhagavad Gita. As I said, 701 verses, 701 principles. But just so that you can get an idea of what are the basics, these 3 principles, if you remember, you'll understand the 3 pillars. See that on the screen. Brahmacharya literally means celibacy, but celibacy does not literally means not getting married. What celibacy means is self-control. Similarly, ahimsa is non-injury. Satyam means truth. So the first principle of Brahmacharya, what is Brahmacharya? What is self-control? opposite of self-control is indulgence. When you indulge in the world, you violate your self-control. Just because you can afford, just because you can acquire the objects, people go all out and they indulge. But what you don't realize is when you indulge in the senses, you lose the pleasure, you lose the joy of the senses. The first drink of alcohol that you have, there's tremendous pleasure you get from it. I believe so. I've not tried it. I'm sure all of you are experts in that. When you have the first glass of alcohol, there's tremendous pleasure you get from it. But as you keep drinking it, the pleasure keeps on reducing and reducing and reducing until you lose the pleasure completely. This is the problem with neutralization. So when you keep indulging in the sense objects, you get neutralized to the sense object, you lose the pleasure from the sense objects. Does anyone has any pleasure when you're using your eyes? You'll say, what are you talking about? I'm just seeing the eyes, it's functional. There's no pleasure. Does anyone have pleasure in using their arms? It's just functional. Where's the pleasure? And yet, you ask a person who has no eyes, who has no arms, he'll give anything to have eyes and arms. We have lost the pleasure of eyes. We have lost the pleasure of arms. Why? Because you've been continuously using it. So that is all right. You don't have a choice. But the problem is, the mistake that you're making is you're picking up objects in the world and you're indulging in it and you're losing the pleasure from it. Some of you may remember the first time you watched television. When television came out, the first time you watched television, the whole street used to congregate to watch one television screen. There was tremendous pleasure. And today, if you talk about pleasure in watching television, you'll say, what is wrong with you? There is a pleasure in television. When the first smartphone came out, what pleasure it was. Just to look at it, it was pleasure. Now people don't want to look at the smartphones. Forget about pleasure. So where did you lose the pleasure? How did you lose the pleasure? It's nothing to do with the TV. It's nothing to do with the phones, because of indulgence. If you keep away from it, what is known as digital detox, you keep away from it for a while, you detox from it, you get back the pleasure. Try it out. It's interesting. So it's nothing to do with the objects. It's nothing to do with beings in the world. Same thing happens in relationships. When the boy meets the girl, they are so much in love, they look forward to seeing each other. And what they do, they make the mistake. What mistake they make? Of getting married. They make the mistake of getting married. Then what happens? Indulge completely with the other person and lose the pleasure. Within few months of marriage, the fellow's eyes is going towards somebody else. There's nothing wrong with the girl. There's nothing wrong with the boy. The problem is indulge. When you indulge too much, you lose the pleasure and you look for pleasure elsewhere. So what is self-control? Self-control is to regulate your sense contacts, not to indulge. Self-control is not self-denial. Self-control does not mean you stop contacting the sense objects. That's not self-control. But intelligent regulation of your sense contacts so that you keep the pleasure alive constantly. At the age of 80, the person is playing tennis. He's playing cricket. It's because he's disciplined. He's self-controlled. He's enjoying it. So you've got to regulate, moderate. There's a proverb which many of you all would know. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. So if you really feel that you're not enjoying anything, what should you do? Get away from it. When you get away from it, you'll get back the pleasure. See that on the screen. It's a very simple principle. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. I was talking to somebody recently and I was asking him, hey, how was the lockdown? He said, you know what, Bhaskarji, lockdown was so nice. I said, oh, everybody is complaining about lockdown. Why are you saying it's so nice? No, you know what? Earlier, we used to constantly fight with the in-laws. Now we have an excellent relationship with the in-laws. I said, is it? What did you do? No, I didn't do anything. We have not met them for 2 years. Therefore, we have an excellent relationship with in-laws. So I said, okay, fine. His interpretation of enjoyment is different. So where is the pleasure? Because of abstinence. So when you abstain, you get back the pleasure. So intelligently, if you do that, you can maintain that contact. You can get the enjoyment late into your life. So that is self-control. The second principle is ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-injury. Non-injury does not only mean physical, it also means mental. Mentally, you don't have any ill will against others. The famous example of Christ, when Christ was crucified, he said, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. He had no ill will against those people who crucified him for no fault of his. So others can harm, but you don't have any ill will against them. But that does not mean you become passive. In fact, the wrong understanding of ahimsa has made Indians passive. And countries after countries conquered India because they didn't understand this concept properly. So ahimsa does not mean passivity. You will need to take arms if you need to protect yourself. If somebody files a legal case against you, you've got to fight them. So ahimsa is not at the action level, but is at the thought level. At the thought level, you should not have any ill will. But at the action level, you may have to take action if the situation demands it. All the gods in Hinduism, they carry weapons. Rama carried a bow and arrow. Vishnu carried a discus. Shiva carried a trident. All the gods carried weapons. What they indicate is they are embodiments of universal love. But when it comes to protecting, you got to protect yourself and the family. It's your obligation. Shakespeare says, sometimes you may have to be cruel only to be kind. Sometimes you may have to be cruel. Why are you cruel? Why are you rude? Only to be kind, to help the other person. See that on the screen. So it's a mental attitude, not a physical action. So physically, you may have to take action wherever necessary. And thirdly, the third pillar of the Bhagavad Gita is Satyam. Satyam means truth. Again, truth does not mean that you should not speak lies. Yes, it means that, but much more. Truth means how to act in the best interest of others. How should you conduct yourself that it may help others? Who decides what is right, what is wrong? If you have to make a choice, how do you decide whether your choice is correct? And this is where the principle of truth comes. So truth, again, is defined by Shakespeare. And Shakespeare defines truth as being true to yourself. This, above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. So if you want to lead a truthful life, you should not keep listening to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but you got to keep listening to whom? To yourself. See the famous words of Shakespeare. He defines what is Satyam. To thine own self be true. Be true to your conviction. Be true to your conscience. And if you're true to yourself, you are true to others. You're true to your family. You're true to your neighbors. You're true to the whole country. But all that you're doing is you're following your conviction. You're following your conscience. So the Bhagavad Gita teaches you how to make the right choices in life. And these choices in life will help you take decisions in your material path and also in the spiritual path. So you need to know how to handle your relationship. You need to know how to handle your work, how to handle every aspect of your life. And once you are able to do that, then you can step up to spiritual development. And you can reach the highest pinnacles of self-perfection. So these principles of the Bhagavad Gita is what we will be discussing in the weekly classes. But Unfortunately, today, nobody understands these principles, and no fault of people because they're ignorant. Spirituality and religion has not been updated. It's not been upgraded. So whatever was given out 5,000 years back, people are still blindly following that. Your phones are being updated. Your computers are being updated, but the religion is not updated. So here is an effort in our institution to update this knowledge, to bring this knowledge to modern thought and language so that everyone can learn this and apply it in their lives. So you need to act on this knowledge. You need to learn this knowledge here and now. A person was taking a walk in the beach. And as he was walking in the beach, he saw his friend. He said, hey, and both of them waved. He said, hi, hi. And he went for his walk. And he came back. He found the friend standing in the same place. He said, hey, I saw you half an hour back. You're standing in the same place. Man, what's happened? No. You know what? I want to go in and swim, but I'm waiting for the waves to stop. I said, what? You're waiting for the waves to stop? You can never swim. So you can't wait for the waves to subside. You need to plunge into the waves and learn how to swim and enjoy swimming. Similarly, everyone is waiting. Oh, when will my obligations get over? Then I will start reading the Bhagavad Gita. You will never start the Bhagavad Gita. So you've got to take up this knowledge, the study of Vedanta, in and through your obligation. Just as you go to the gym, you exercise, you maintain your body in and through your obligations. Similarly, you've got to consider this as a knowledge, consider this as a gym for the mind. So in and through your obligations, you pick up this knowledge and little by little, whatever best you can, you apply this knowledge and you will find that much it helps you. And once you learn more, you get the confidence, learn a bit more, and then you can develop. So many of you all in this audience may be CEOs. Some of you all may be students. Some of you all may be homemakers. Some of you all may be sports persons. So whoever you are, you need this knowledge. And you start practicing this knowledge in and through your obligations. So as I said, the Bhagavad Gita discusses on who am I? Who are you? Mama Dharma. Dharma means your nature, just as the nature of fire is its heat. If you take away heat from fire, there is no fire. Similarly, what is your nature? Your nature is happiness. You are the embodiment of happiness. And yet, how many people can claim to be happy? How many people can throw up their arms and say, I'm truly happy? So friends, here's an opportunity. Here's a knowledge that is open to every one of us, that every one of us can access. And if we take it up and practice this, we'll make our lives better and we can help others who need this. I'm sure once you listen to this lecture and the lecture tomorrow, there'll be a lot of questions. As I said, this is the whole idea about Vedanta, is to encourage you all to think. And we conduct these weekly classes so that when you have questions, you come to those classes and the teachers there will answer it. They have the time and they have the expertise to answer your questions. Similarly, these principles of the Bhagavad Gita, this is just an introduction, what we are giving today and tomorrow, but an in-depth explanation will be given in the weekly classes. So there are several weekly classes, and fortunately now all these classes are online. So we have teachers in different centers in South Africa. We have teachers in Durban, we have teachers in Pretoria, in Johannesburg, in Cape Town. But all the teachers are now moved the classes online. So it doesn't matter where you are. In fact, you could be anywhere in Africa. You can still attend these classes. And the list of classes are on the website. And we would recommend you all to go to the website and register for the classes so that they can send the information on how you can join the classes. So dear friends, I'll stop here for now and I will pass it on to Niba, and she'll give you instructions on how to follow it up. And we'll meet tomorrow evening, same place, same time. Thank you. Over to Niba.